welcome to the premiere episode of Mayday Moments. I am your co-host, Dorothy O'Dell, and this is...
I'm your other co-host, Mark Rothenberg, and good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you're watching us from. I'm glad you stopped in to join us.
Absolutely. I'm super excited because for those of you that have been following me, you know that veterans and first responders are very near and dear to my heart. I'm actually currently serving on a board for a veteran organization, and I just really am passionate about helping our heroes, badgers, and warriors. So Mark just happens to be a first responder. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm a firefighter here in Florida. I've been here doing this for about 17 years. Had a passion for serving. Due to some tragedy, it got me involved in Heroes, Badges, and Warriors, which is a nonprofit focused on our veterans, our first responders, and our other unsung heroes. And where I met Dorothy, and we had this great idea to start a podcast geared directly towards our veterans, our first responders, and the plights and trials and tribulations that we face throughout our careers, and especially when it comes to our mental health and when we should be calling a Mayday for ourselves. Right. Hence the Mayday Moments.
Mayday Moments. Yeah, actually, Mark came up with that name. I love it. And it's funny because, I don't know about you, but back when we were kids, there's certain shows that we used to watch. And a couple weeks ago, I was at my brother's, and he was searching through different TV show theme songs and had it playing through his speakers. And I'm like, you got to get China Beach up. If anybody remembers China Beach and you remember the opening credits, like I love it. And I can still visualize it. It was one of the favorite shows that I used to watch with my dad growing up. I don't watch much TV now, but or MASH. Anybody remembers MASH with Klinger? Sometimes I feel like I'm in a MASH unit. So I thought, I got to get some background music to the show. So since this is the premiere episode, we're just starting this. And because we're both, like I said, we're both here for our heroes, badges, and warriors, and we want to get their stories out. I know that on other shows of mine that there have been a lot of veterans and first responders on there, but this show is geared 100% just towards our heroes, badges, and warriors. So Mark, I can't believe it. We're finally doing this. It's been a lot in the making here to get to where we're at today.
Well, you've been trying to get me to do come on your other podcast for what, 6 8 months now?
Yeah.
And it took starting one for me to come on for me to do it. So
not true. You made cameo appearances on the Men's Vulnerability episode.
I did. And then for the Second Chance Ranch fundraiser.
Yes.
Which was an amazing experience to be a part of. And that kind of spurred it was the inspiration after talking to one of the other guests afterwards, and becoming friends with him and building that relationship, that more needs to get out there. There needs to be more so that we don't feel alone. And having that feeling of loneliness, having that feeling of being alone and being isolated is far too rampant, especially in our veteran communities, in our first responder communities. And then when I talk heroes, unsung heroes, the wives, the spouses, the children, the families of those veterans, those first responders that go out, they're left, day after day when their loved one is out on the job, out on deployment, that they're the ones at home that are suffering as well. And even to the point, recently, I've gotten very involved with my son's school, volunteering, spending some time there and talking to the teachers and realizing that teachers, who really are heroes in their own right, don't have the support that they need. And I want to open, I'm going to open this up to the teachers as well, because they deal with it, and they're on the front lines dealing with the children, and needing the knowledge base, with children, and some of the experiences that they have, and seeing some of these children go through anxiety, go through depression, go through the traumas that they face, and how it shapes them. That teachers are dealing with a lot, especially with our families. You broken families being on the rise. Um, yeah, it's a
Well,
lot.
and especially since COVID, and I have a couple friends that are teachers, and I I mean, kids have been punks for a while, but especially since COVID hit, and I felt extremely bad for my stepson's teacher during COVID because she had still had to have 30 students to one of her being on on a Zoom call, and that's how she had to teach. And all these kids going, madam, miss, I need your help, and she can't be right there. So I don't know. Kudos to anybody who is a teacher, especially since COVID has hit, because it's definitely not like when we were in school. Things have changed a lot, and teachers, you're right, teachers do not get the credit that they deserve. So yeah, I'm up for bringing them on too. Actually, I'll see if Dawn wants to come on one of our episodes. What a good friend of mine.
Oh, I have one right now that she's starting. She's pushing the heroes and badges with the teachers at the school to build our teacher wing
Right.
currently, and our teacher, our outreach to our educators, um, would love to, planning on bringing her on. Amazing individual, really cares, master of her craft, really cares about what's best for the kids and about bringing awareness, mental health awareness, and advocacy to her profession in mass.
Right.
So it's there's been a lot, and there's a lot that we can cover and we can go over. And in respect for everyone's time and being an avid podcast listener that I am, I don't like the 3-4 hour podcast. So for everyone out there listening, we're going to do our best to keep this between 45 minutes and an hour, so you can listen to it in one shot.
Yeah.
And this offer goes out. We will have email in the link. If there's something you want to hear about, something you want to talk about, we're open to anyone that wants to come and talk about their story, talk about their experiences. If you don't want to come on the air but you want to share it, email us. We'll be happy to read it and talk about it. Nothing is. I hate to say nothing's off limits, but pretty much, we want to get it out there. We want to get this stigma of that's around and surrounding mental health. We want to break it. We want to get it gone, and we want to build that understanding in the community. Build that understanding that some scars aren't visible, and that's a big thing with mental health, and especially when it comes to when you talk trauma, PTSD, depression, anxiety. You don't always see that. It's easy to look at somebody who has a fractured leg, who has a heart condition, who has some physical injury that you can see, who has cancer. Those are all very real things you can touch.
Mm-hmm.
And mental health isn't. It's so abstract, and it differs from person to person.
And you could be smiling through your depression and anxiety, because I have done that several times in my lifetime. And people don't even know unless I tell them that I'm in a high anxious moment or just down and depressed. Like, people don't know. And because I smile extra hard when I'm in those moments. So, I had a niece that took her life a while ago. Well, she wasn't my niece. She was a niece of somebody I dated. And, everything was going good. Everything was going, we didn't know that what was going on. And then all of a sudden she took her life, and it was just like, wow. And it was shocking, and it was devastating. And they always say people who talk about it never do it. Well, that's bullshit, in my opinion. because whether you talk about it or you don't talk about it, if you decide in that moment that you're done, they'll find a way to do it. Same thing with my uncle. He was
And
mentally unstable, but I mean, he still ended up taking his life. We never thought it would have been how it was, or especially on Christmas. But hello, when they're at their wits' end and they're done, they're done.
and that's something that I've experienced suicide as well, and not just responding to suicides, but suicides that were close that rocked my entire fire department, and brought light to a lot of what's going on. And everyone has their demons, and not everyone's vulnerable enough or allowing themselves to be vulnerable to talk about it. And that's really when you start to get the help or realize that somebody's not all right, is when they decide to humble themselves and become vulnerable. Unfortunately, in a profession, a male-dominated profession, military, first responders, we're taught to not be vulnerable. We're taught to deal with it. And actually, there's a stigma of, if you do open yourself up and become vulnerable, that you're not worthy of being there, and you're pushed out. And that's the wrong approach. There are phenomenal members of our military, phenomenal members, firefighters, law enforcement, that have had experiences, that have had, seen things that they don't want to talk about, and they're expected to just ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
And after years, it builds to the point that it spills over. And if you look at the numbers, and if anybody wants it, they're more than welcome to look it up. But in the military world and the first responder world, divorce is huge. I had
85% was the last statistic I heard. 85% of all marriages end in divorce with first responders and veterans and military. I'm just like, dude, and so that we need to find a solution to that, right? And the whole reason why I started Heroes, Badgers, and Warriors, because the suicide rate then was 22 a day, then it jumped to 44 in less than 6 months, and then when I found out the divorce rate, it's at 85%. I'm like, we need to do better. We need to. I'm in Canada, you're in the United States, and I'm fighting just as hard for you guys over there as I am for our Canadians. And we know this has to stop, because divorce affects children. It affects everybody within the household, not just the spouses. So just my opinion, though.
well, and I look, and fortunately, I've never been divorced, but I did have a nasty, long-term engagement, that ended in a separation. That, for lack of a better term, it is kind of like a divorce, because we share custody of my oldest son, and it's hard, and just adding that on top of everything else. And something that was interesting that kind of sticks with me when I was going through all that is one of my lieutenants, and I love him to death. When I came back after everything had happened, and he said, he's like, now you're a real fireman. Yeah, your first divorce under your belt.
What?
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I had the same reaction. I'm like, what are you talking about? I said that's not the goal.
No.
It shouldn't be, oh, hey, yeah, you're going to get divorced. Yeah, I know it's high. And then looking back through my own journey, dissecting my life and my career, and dissecting my traumas and everything that I've experienced. Well, I was working 15 to 18 shifts a month the year leading up to it. And, I was miserable being home. I was exhausted. I was always tired, dealing with, more calls than anybody would want to deal with, seeing things that nobody should have to see. And, I was a victim. I hate using the word victim, but of my career. And that affected my relationship with my current wife, and we're happily married. And, I started seeing that again,
Mm-hmm.
a few years ago when I experienced a life-shaking trauma. a life, that just rocked my world. That was my aha moment, my wake up call. And I didn't know how I'd become and how bad until my wife and I sat down with with a clinician, and she shared that I'm not the same person that she married.
Mm-hmm.
And it was since that happened that something changed. That I became a version of myself that I didn't like. And we see that, we see guys that they become aggressive, they become irritated, they become irritable to be around. And it gets classified as burnout.
Yeah.
Not, hey, maybe we should get you some help. Oh, you're burnout. You've been at busy houses. Let's move you somewhere else. Let's give you a break. Well, the break didn't help. It wasn't burnout. It was, dealing with that trauma that I had experienced and still trying to recover from it. And I'm still trying to recover from it. And I don't know if you ever truly do, but taking the lessons from it and being able to accept it and work through it is helping. And I'll be the first one to say, and for everyone listening, it's never too early to go seek help. And what I've been advocating for within my department before I went on leave is to establish yourself. Find a clinician, do the research now before you have that major trauma. Before you have that potentially career-ending trauma or see that critical incident that shocks your world, have someone that you can call, have someone that you're familiar with, someone that knows you, and have that trained professional there waiting. Mm-hmm. And with mental health, an ounce of prevention is worth 10 tons of cure, because it would have been a whole lot easier for me to deal with had I had the training and the knowledge earlier in my career than trying to deal with it after it's already happened.
Absolutely. Listening to your story there, I'm reminded of Jonathan Gooley. I don't know if I've ever connected you with Jonathan.
I know John.
Okay. So he is a retired police officer from Florida who's been on my show a couple times. And, he said something to me in his interviews that has rocked my world and has stayed with me. Actually, I was just thinking about, he was in my head the other night when I was thinking of something. And he said, as a police officer, like you said, they see things day out, in and day out, that no one else would ever see or should have to see. And he says, when they first get home, all he wanted to do was take a shower. And his wife would throw the kid at him and say, here, I've been with the kid all day long. I just need a break. And he would have been perfectly happy to do that. Just give him 15 minutes to have a shower, clean off all the crap that he just went through in that day. 15 minutes was all he was asking for. And did he communicate that effectively to his wife? And he's the first one to say no. Right. And, as a spouse, if she would have known that, hey, wait a minute, just give me a break, let me go have a shower, and then I'll be more than happy to take care of the kids for a little bit. Because when you come home, you want to be around your family, right? For the most part, unless it's just been one of those days. But it's not that he didn't want to spend time with his son or his daughter, but he just needed that time. And one of the things that since I heard that part of Jonathan's story, and which led to his divorce, well, among other things, but that's Jonathan's story to tell. And you can go watch that on our YouTube channel. Just look up his episode and you'll hear his whole story. But, part of why I wanted to do this podcast was, like you said, to help spouses and to get them the help that they need too. And it's even in a civilian marriage, it's not easy to say to my husband exactly what my needs are and things like that. It should be, but it's not always easy, right? As a matter of fact, I just shared with somebody yesterday that last month I was sick. I was this is something I had an allergic reaction to a bite. And anyways, make a long story short, I actually said to my husband, I can barely take care of myself right now. I can't take care of you. So I'm just going to go to do what I need to do, and I'll be back in an hour. I come back, everything was done. Like, and I didn't even ask. I just said I needed time to myself. So I think in having that proper communication with our spouses too is important, and being able to, have people on the show that can speak to that and give tips and things like that too, I think is important, and to help out our spouses within our first responder and veteran community.
100%. That happened to me with when my oldest was a newborn. I'd come home from working and I would work a 48-hour shift at the fire department. My one day off, I'd go work a 12-hour shift at the hospital, be home at night, and all of a sudden, oh, here, take the baby. I've had him for the last 2.5 days. And not that I didn't want him, but I needed to sleep. I needed to rest. And then you combine that with not sleeping at work.
Mm-hmm.
Not getting the rest at work, because I don't care if you're at a busy station, slow station. If you run one call after midnight or no calls or 10 calls, you're not sleeping. You're not getting that restorative sleep, that restorative rest, because you're always in a state of high energy, always in a state of alertness. But it creates such animosity and resentment from your spouse, from your partner, because yes, taking care of kids is stressful. I have 3 of them now, and I'm home full time at the moment, and it's not easy. And that's given me a whole new respect for the spouses that are home with the kids, of holding things down. And that's where they're the heroes, in all reality. They don't get any of the notoriety for what they're doing. I got the chance a few months ago to sit down with a bunch of spouses from my department, and that was one of the biggest things is, their husbands were coming home. They were home taking care of the kids all day, the entire shift. Then their husband would get mandatory, which is, hey, sorry, we don't have the staffing for you to go home. You got to stay and work another 24 hours. And when they came home, they were disconnected. They were disengaged. And the spouses felt slighted, because now they're looking at their partner, who in their mind isn't stepping up to help with the family. And they're not understanding that, hey, he was just up for 48 hours straight, essentially. Mm-hmm. He's exhausted. He needs that rest. It's not anything that he doesn't want to be involved. He wants to be involved, and it hurts him that he can't be, that he is disconnected. And that's something that leads to the depression. It leads to divorce, is that disassociation. It's that disconnect. And it leads to conflict, and something as simple as that conversation and having that understanding and recognizing the spouses that are there day in and day out. Well, their partners are away. Well, their partners are out serving the community, out serving our country. And, they're not getting that recognition or the support. There's very little, almost no support for spouses. And everything you see, everything you hear is about the first responder themselves, or about the veteran themselves. And that's not the approach to take. That's the approach that needs to be changed. And there are a few organizations that are out there that are trying, that have resources, but there's not enough of them.
Right.
And that's something that we hope to bring. That's something that we're, hopefully through this podcast, through our other endeavors with Heroes, Badges, and Warriors, that we can bring those spouses together, create that community, create that support that they don't have, and create that family environment. When I first got in the fire service, it was a true brotherhood. Now, I'm going to preface this where regionally it's different. Up in the Northeast and larger cities where there's a lot of tradition, a lot of family, a lot of lineage, in the fire service, the family atmosphere is a lot stronger. That brotherhood is a lot stronger than than what I've experienced down here in Florida. And I've seen a shift. And a lot of that shift has happened because of technology. When I started, smartphones weren't everywhere. Now everyone has one. And it's that social media that you can do everything from your fingertips, from your phone, that you can talk to people from a keyboard now for everything, that you're not interacting with each other. When crews have to have a hard rule that there will be no phones at the dinner table, when the crew goes to sit down for dinner at the end, at night, and everyone has to put their phones up on the counter, so no one's tempted to look at it, so you can actually sit and have a conversation with the people that you spend a third of your life with, and actually, in reality, more, because those guys, your crew becomes your family. It's your second family, and with that, your families get together. Your families, tend to mingle and be a part of it. To have a rule that, hey, you got to put your phone down to have family time, it boggles my mind.
Yes.
And even a lot of crews don't eat together anymore. They all one way. They all go and they do their own things. They all bring their meals from home. They all go out and get fast food or get whatever. And they don't sit down and have that time, that family dinner. And that's crucial. And that's where you get to know people. And that's the one thing that's always been great at the firehouse. When we sit down at the table, rank doesn't matter. At that point, where it's family dinner, it's family time, we're at the kitchen table, rank doesn't matter at that point. Everyone's equal. Now, when the tones go up and we got to get on the truck, rank matters. If we're sitting down doing a training at the table, yes, but at dinner, rank doesn't matter. You're cutting it up, you're having a good time. It doesn't matter if you're a battalion chief, if you're a division chief, if you're a captain, lieutenant, driver, engineer, tailboard firefighter, paramedic, EMT, it doesn't make a difference. You're there. It's family time. You're all equal at that moment. And that's where you build those strong bonds, which makes you an effective team, which gives you the ability to know that you can rely on the person sitting next to you, not just on the job, but off the job.
Right.
Building those bonds has developed some of my best friendships. And, several guys I can call at the drop of a hat. If I'm in need and they're like, we got you. It's, hey, come to the house. We'll have a bonfire, we'll sit out, and we don't even have to talk. And it's just, you're having a bad day, you have that person you can call. And we're getting away from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that whenever, wherever anymore.
Right. You brought up so much good stuff there. If you ever go out to dinner with your spouse and you look around and you see how many other spouses are on their phones around you, it absolutely drives me nuts. Not to say that I have never been guilty of sitting on my phone when I've been with my husband. However, I do my best to put it up when we're together. And, if I'm in the middle of a contract or whatever, I'm like, okay, wait, you got to give me like 10 minutes here or whatever. But when we're together, I hate it when he's on his phone, especially during dinner. Like, it drives me insane. And that you see other families around you that are like, they're not even having a conversation. And we need to get back. I remember Sunday dinners. Like, I don't even remember the last time we've had a Sunday dinner. It was like when I was growing up. And it's been bothering me that we don't have those, right? And so I need to make a point myself to have that commitment back to the family.
and that's, my wife and I get caught up on our phone because between her career and myself and everything that we have going on, that the phone will ring multiple times during dinner. Mm-hmm. And having it on you, it's it's so easy to grab it, check, and look. And that's that, having that information right at your fingertips. And we've had to really work at it that now at home, we leave our phones in the kitchen. We put them both on the kitchen counter, and it doesn't matter if it rings or not. It's dinner time is family time. And then after dinner, it's all right, let's check, make sure nothing is going on. Even, and like you said, when you go out to eat, my wife and I went out to celebrate her licensure, for her new step, her latest endeavor and new step in her career. And you're right, looking around, everyone's on their phones.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see, aside from us, I didn't see one table where the people sitting there weren't on their phones. And that's boggles my mind. Is you're there with the person you love, you're there with somebody you want to be with, and you're not paying attention to them.
Yeah.
And you're on your phone. And wow, we just went off on a whole different realm of things.
Direction there. And it's funny because I had my phone just went off and I had to check it, so I was paying attention to you. But I was checking, and yes, we did. But these are some of the important things that, need. I mean, people go through it, and it's not something that, that is. It's important to get out there. Let's just put it that way, because it is happening. It is part of. I thank you for sharing that. What you had said about when you went to go talk to the spouses of the people in your house, in the firehouse, and talk to them. And I guess my biggest thing is, if you have a spouse that is a first responder and they've been on shift for 48 hours, they're dead tired. Your spouse that's at home is dead tired. They've been taking care of the kids. Obviously, there's a difference, especially if that spouse is not working. What would you say would be the best advice you could give the spouse that's home that's taking care of the children, and even your fellow firefighter, to bridge the gap between both spouses so that they come to an understanding? Like, is it something that they should have already communicated before the firefighter got home, or do you think, just maybe when they get home having that communication, or a combination of both? What do you think is the most effective in your experience?
In my experience, now I don't live in the same place I work, so I did that by design. I lived in the same jurisdiction I worked in for a short time, and realized I didn't have a disconnect, and I was a basket case going home, and I felt like I was never off duty. Now, I lived 4 miles from my station, so the same grocery store I went to on shift, I was shopping at when I was off. I was driving past the station anytime I left the house, and I always felt like I was on. When I moved back to where I grew up, over an hour away from where I'm stationed at, my whole demeanor changed. I was able to give myself that disconnect. That drive home allowed me to disconnect from the job. It allowed me that time to process the shift. It allowed me that time to kind of recharge to get home. Now, not saying that I wasn't still tired. I still wanted to take that shower. And that's where that communication comes in, and recognizing that. And from the first responders, the firefighter or the police officer coming home, sit down with your spouse, and sit down with your husband, your wife. Sit down and just say, hey, and recognize. Start with that recognition that it's not easy being home with the kids for 12 to 48 hours. Mm-hmm. It's not easy being, handling that, taking care of bath time, meals, getting them into school, homework, doing all that. Well, you're out. And that's not discounting what you're doing, but recognize that they're there holding everything together. And it's the same with our military. Those spouses are holding everything together while you're abroad. Mm-hmm. And coming home and recognizing that. And you know what? If you got to take the baby when you first get home for 20 minutes, or an hour, so your significant other, so your spouse could take a shower, do it.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, suck it up for a little bit. Say, hey, put them first. Say, hey, I understand you haven't showered in 2 days, or you need a little time. I really want to take a shower,
All right.
but you know what? I'll take care of the kids. I'll hold the baby. Go take a shower. Go get cleaned up, and then let me take mine. Let them go first. Put them first, and
Mhm.
that's something that we don't do. I'm guilty of it.
Right.
That I don't always put my wife's needs before mine, and same. She doesn't always put my needs before hers, and that's just human nature.
Mhm.
That it's you know it's me first,
Mhm.
and there's nothing that I want to do more when I get home than just take a shower. And even if I showered at the station before I leave, because I don't like getting in my car after working and driving home not taking a shower,
Mhm.
it's still something different about getting in your own shower, and you feel human again. You feel like a person.
Right. So I've heard that within the military community, this is when they're in active duty and um, inactive duty and not deployed and deployed and yeah. Anyways, I've heard that there's different groups that the spouse that's at home can connect with for that camaraderie that they need. Now, does first responders have that as well? Like, do spouses get together and help each other out, especially when you guys are on duty or anything like that?
Yes and no. Uh, Anything that's happened with that, it's been, again, your fire family becomes part of your family.
Right.
So as spouses, as your families come into the firehouse for Christmas, for Sunday dinners, for holidays, to spend that time with the crew and all the families together, they do start to build a relationship. And I know of spouses that have kind of formed their own little groups. Spouses at stations,
Mm-hmm.
that they look out for each other. Um, a couple of my closest friends, their wives are really are close with mine, and they look out for each other. And they're there to support each other. But at the same time, that works really, really well if you all live in proximity. You know, we all live over an hour apart. And I'm
Right.
talking like the three of us all live an hour from each other, no matter which way you go. And it's
Well, that's why they invented the telephone and Zoom and things like that.
and that's what they do. And we try to get together when we can,
Mm-hmm.
and try to meet up. And it's not as often as we'd like, but just having that person you can call and talk to
Right.
helps. I know other spouse groups that live, they all live close to each other in the same area, that they get together on their days off. That one will come over and watch the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Watch the somebody has young kids, they'll babysit and help, so they can get stuff, so they can get stuff done. And it's building that family. You kind of got to build it within. Um,
Right.
I can't talk on the military, but from what I've heard is they're more organized with it on base,
Yeah.
with having those. As far as law enforcement and fire, it's not built that way. There isn't hey, we have this spouse group that meets on Tuesday nights, come be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of left up to the spouses to do it themselves. And if you look at like my situation, I'm an hour to an hour and a half away from my jurisdiction, from where I work. And there's a large number of personnel that live in the city, live within the jurisdiction. Well, my wife can't exactly call them up to say, hey, can you come keep an eye on my kids for me for an hour? I need to go, need to go to run to the grocery store, or,
Right.
or hey, I'm just having a rough time, or hey, let's get the kids together. It's an all day affair. It's an all day event
Mm-hmm.
to truck the kids an hour, no matter which way you cut it,
Mm-hmm.
to get together for a play date. So regionally, it makes a little bit of difference depending on where you're at and location to those. And that's something build is getting another organization that spouses can get involved in. And
Right.
if you are a spouse of a first responder or military vet, get online, look for them. As Heroes, Badges, and Warriors grows, and we have more spouses that join up and start their own communities and their own support, as that builds out, that'll be a resource for you. But a lot of churches have those, and if the church doesn't, start one.
Right.
Um,
Well, I'm just thinking that would be totally beneficial, because for everybody within a first responder marriage to have some kind of backup, whether that's be family or even friends, like you said, whether it be in the department or not, and building that community. Because if my husband was gone for 48 hours, I would need a break.
yeah,
Or just have somebody to even talk to, like you
yeah.
said. So it's okay. Mark's dog is out there barking, but that's okay.
My dog's doing his job.
Yes, protecting.
So, which has been an amazing thing, getting a dog, which I never really put enough into the animal and having an animal,
Right.
as far as how therapeutic it could be, until I was involved in a deployment with the National Peer Support Team to my own county, to my own department, after we experienced a couple of suicides earlier this year. And they introduced dogs, and actually the whole bringing dogs was pioneered here in Florida, in South Florida, and saw how having a dog eased. That now I have my own dog, and I've noticed a change myself, that it's just sitting here in discussion, having him come up, put his head on my lap, and just petting the dog just
Right.
brings a new light, and kind of eases any tensions, any anxieties with it. That it really makes sense that even the equestrian therapies that are out there, getting around the horses, and how therapeutic it is.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so I know we're getting close to our touchdowns here at this episode. I just want to remind everybody that definitely, if you are a first responder or a veteran or active duty member and would love to come on and share your story, just simply email us at grahamdorothy408@gmail.com. Just let us know that you're interested. We'll definitely do our best to get you on the show. I don't know about you, but I'm excited to get this podcast off the ground and be a resource for our heroes, badges, and warriors, and to really be able to support this community more. And it's nice to come alongside Mark here and do this with you.
It's great. And before we close off and sign off for the night, I want to share something that you're going to hear at the end of every podcast. When you're in that darkness, when you're having those struggles, when you feel like all hope is lost, remember that you're not alone. There's somebody else out there that is going through or has gone through the exact same thing you are. And call a Mayday. We're very, very good in the military world, in the law enforcement, in the fire service, of calling for help when we're on the job. When you're in law enforcement, you're a police officer and you need help, something's getting bad, you call for backup. In the fire service, we're taught from the start of the academy, you get in trouble, call a Mayday. In the military, they call for fire support, they call for a quick reaction force, they call for help. And that's great when we're on the job. When we're in service, when we're in uniform, it's second nature. As soon as that uniform comes out, we forget about it. And call for help. And my challenge to everyone else, if your phone rings and it's one of your brothers, one of your sisters, it's another first responder, pick up the phone. You ignoring that call might be what drives them over the edge. And there's been studies showing that the last call many first responders make before taking their life was to their officer. It was to a fellow fireman, a fellow police officer, that they called for help and nobody answered. Answer the phone. You might save somebody's life. You might make that difference. And we can prevent somebody from taking their own life and losing somebody, somebody that we didn't want to lose.
You remind me, 2 weeks ago, I was in one of our veteran communities, and one of my veterans shared with me that he's close friends with this particular person. I'm not going to say names. And they went on a road trip together. And my veteran reported that this guy that he went on this road trip with, he was planning that this was his last trip ever. And when he come back from the trip, that he had planned on taking his life. But because my veteran decided to take the trip with this gentleman, he decided that that wasn't going to be his last road trip. That trip gave him hope, and he ended up not committing suicide. So you have no idea, just by being there for somebody, being kind, just listening to them, or like Mark said, picking up that phone, what that moment can do for somebody else. So like Mark said, pick up the phone, reach out, be kind, just listen, and connect with that person.
And sometimes it's just that reassurance that everything's going to be okay, or that you're not alone. And one of the biggest things that leads to somebody taking their own life is that isolation. It's isolation, hopelessness, and that's feeling that we're abandoned, feeling that we're alone, we're isolated, that nobody understands us, that nobody understands what's going on or how we're feeling, and that nobody cares, or that you're not feeling loved. Well, I'll tell you, I love every first responder out there. I love every veteran out there, and we're here for you. And that love, that brotherhood is felt throughout. That there isn't anyone in my phone that I can't call on a bad day. And the same goes, that's anyone, that calls me is having a bad day. I'm there for you. And we need to be, because we need to take care of each other. We need to be there for that person when they're in need. Just because the uniform comes off doesn't mean we're not still in service, doesn't mean we're not still there to help and make a difference in somebody's life.
Absolutely. Funny you said that, because I have a hat that says "Sworn to Serve." So whether I'm with my heroes, badges, and warriors, or whether I'm with my family or friends, I'm here to serve as well. So I may not know exactly what it is that you guys go through, but I'm here for you, and can connect you with other people too as well.
And for those of you that don't know, Dorothy is an amazing listener. So, because I've had to reach out on her a few times going through some of my struggles and dealing with some stuff with the job and just having someone to talk to, just having someone that's there to listen is a game changer. And it doesn't have to be a therapist. It doesn't have to be a psychologist, psychiatrist. It doesn't have to be. It could just be a friend. Shoot, get a dog. They're going to love you no matter what.
And they don't talk back.
They don't talk back, and they always listen most of the time. I have one that doesn't listen so well, but that's the wife's dog. My dog listens. Which I find myself every now and again, talking to my dog. And it feels better to get it out and share it. And if you don't want to talk to another human, I said, talk to the dog. Talk to a tree, put it out there, and share it. And share that burden, so you're not dealing with that weight. It's another one of those cliches, many hands make light work.
Mm-hmm.
The more you talk about what's going on, the more you talk about the problems you're having, how things make you feel, how something affected you, the easier it's going to become to process that.
Mm-hmm.
It's when we hold it inside, it bottles up, that we just explode.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for saying that, Mark. I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and I knew that he had been having some struggles with his oldest, and his oldest was having some mental health issues, and um, he had made a comment to my friend that maybe he'd be better off not here, and of course, this young lad had attempted suicide before, and thank God he didn't do it. Um, and so, in talking with my friend, I said, "Tell you what," because he had been to a male therapist, but the male is not what this child needs. They needed a female to because the female is, I guess, more in touch with their emotions, is what this child thought. So I said, have him contact me. I'm here for him. Let him know, like, give him my background, have him check out a couple of my shows just so he sees who I am, how genuine I am, because what you see is what you get. If I'm having a good day, you see it. If I'm having a bad day, you see it. I'm as real as you're gonna get, and but I always be kind, no matter how angry I am. And I said, but I'm here to listen to him. So I don't know. I haven't heard back from him yet, but um, you never know, right? You just never know. And I'd rather somebody reach out to me um, and have that conversation than hear about their death later, because that would have just got me.
And I look forward to that conversation, to hearing how that is next time we once you do. But we're hitting that hour mark,
Yes.
and I know people's attention span. They listening to me ramble on and on has got to be wearing on some people, on someone. But thank you, everyone. It means a lot that you came on. You listened to what we have. And next one, the dogs are going to be put inside. But it means a lot that you're here, that you're listening to us go on and talk about real issues, talk about things that are happening, how it affects people, talk about our stories and other stories. And please, please, please email us, put a comment in, put a comment on if you want to share your story, if you have something you want to hear, something you want to talk about, something you want us to talk about. Please share, because we're not going to be successful without you.
Exactly.
And it's share this with a friend, share this with people, get the word out there that you're not alone. Whatever your struggle is, you're not alone. And help is out there, hope is out there, and you are loved. And go forward and be that light. Be that shining light in the darkness, and don't succumb to the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the sun rises, tomorrow's another day. And next episode, we're going to dive into suicide a little bit more. So since Dorothy brought it up, we're going to dive in a little bit more. It'll get a little deep, but we're going to continue on the path, and I can't wait to hear the response and see the response that we get from everyone. I'm truly excited for this experience and what's to come.
Me too. Where there's breath, there's hope.
And the sun's going to come out tomorrow.
Amen.
So it's always darkest before the dawn, and as long as that sun's going to rise, we'll be here.
Amen. Well, that's our first episode of Mayday Moments.
Of the Mayday Moments.
Mayday Moments. Thank you so much, Mark, for being my host. And love to everybody. Don't forget, be kind and stay safe out there. Till next week. Bye for now.
Bye for now.